So let's talk about the technology that will create jobs, right? new jobs. So I'm going to give a perspective on blockchain evolution and the current ecosystem. I put 3 pictures at the top. My perspective may look black and white for some of you. It may look upside down for some of you. It may be a fresh outlook for some of you, right? Whatever works, I'm going to start. So here's the outline. So I'll just talk about 3 topics and how blockchain evolved and some classification that's going to help you understand the blockchain ecosystem, and then some standards that's happening in this area, right? So you can actually look at blockchain as having gone through like 3 stages of evolution, right? I kind of used the, it's inspired by the book, Melanie Swan's book. So blockchain 1.0 is primarily about Bitcoin and alternative coins, and it started with Satoshi Nakamoto. I'm sure you heard of this 1,000 times. This past couple of days, solving the double spending problem. It started that. But a lot of work has happened before. In fact, there was a keynote talk, right, by Scott, father of blockchain, and he's, I learned quite a bit. So, but starting from 2008, right, that's blockchain 1.0, and then 2.0 is when, this programmable smart contracts thing, actually 2 guys, Vitalik Buterin and Gavin Wood, they were kind of like designing, they wanted to modify the Bitcoin code to make it programmable, right? So that's kind of how it evolved in 2.0, and you can see quickly that was a public chain, and there was 2 other R3 Linux Foundation, 2 other private blockchains got launched, all programmable blockchains in 2015. So 2015 was a turning point in the blockchain space, and you will see that quickly. And then slowly people started to realize it's actually blockchain can have like impact in many areas. So some technologies have vertical impact in one area, but some technologies have horizontal impact in many, many areas, right? That's kind of, blockchain is kind of like that, right? So that's why, in fact, I got interested, because something that, you can do a lot of things with it, right? So you can think that if you learn blockchain, you can find job in different areas. So now, Gartner, how many of you know this Gartner hype cycle? Some of you. So they actually track, every summer they publish this graph that tracks emerging technologies, right? So if you look at it, it's in general, every technology, there's a lot of excitement, a lot of expectations, and then startups raise money. In fact, VCs use this to invest money in startups. So if you're starting a company, pick one of these topics. You have a better chance of raising money. And what happens is then a lot of startups fail, a lot of ideas don't work, right? When there's a new tool, you don't know what it can do, what cannot do, so people try all kinds of things, which is natural. And then what happens is the third phase happens, and people start realizing, oh, it's good for this, it's good for that, and that's a reality phase or adoption phase. It's usually slower, right? So that's usual trend for, up, down, and then, okay, normal life. So blockchain, in 2014 is when Gartner started to put cryptocurrency on the map. It wasn't there before, 2014, 15, they put cryptocurrencies. Do you remember I told you 2015 was the year all these things got launched? The idea of programmable blockchain started, so people started to think more, started to use the term blockchain, right? You can see that on the Gartner hype cycle, starting 2016, they use the term blockchain, no cryptocurrency on there. So in general, it's good. I'm surprised that they are actually following what's going on. So 16, 17, they started to put blockchain, it's like moving up. And then, it looks like it's sliding, but look on the next year, 2018, they started to put something else, blockchain for data security. Now it's kind of starting to show like it could be used in many areas, right? And 19, again, I'm surprised that they started putting decentralized web, DAO, on there. So it seems like they're noticing, and it's going to become mainstream, which is actually the idea of what these guys were thinking about, creating a general purpose computer. But remember, that's only a computer, but to create a decentralized internet, the architecture would require many more components, like storage has to be decentralized. Computing is just one of them. Messaging protocol, how you exchange the messages, and the naming system, the browser, dApps. Well, once you have a decentralized internet or Web 3.0, then you can actually create a business model like a DAO, autonomous. You program your business ideas, and that could be accessed by somebody using a dApp. Remember, to create a decentralized architecture, everything you see here must be decentralized. One important thing you need to understand is the governance model is very important here. People kind of, this is where people get a little confused between distributed and decentralized. Let's make it clear here. Let's say I have €1, right? So you all write, I'm asking everyone to write down that I have €1. So you all have records. It's a distributed ledger. Everyone in this room has a record of it. Okay, I decided to give this to Sula, right? So I'll get it back later. So, so after lunch, coffee. Now, this transaction, I decided to give it to Sula. I didn't ask anyone. So I govern centralized governance here. So it's a distributed data because everybody has this transaction. You all wrote down I gave this money. Everybody in this room. It's a distributed data. You have data that's showing that I had money. I gave it to Sula. That's distributed data, centralized governance. Now let's talk about the other extreme. I actually trying to decide between whether I give this euro to. I have to take one more out, I guess. Yeah. I'm running out. Oh, thank you. So now I have to. Let's say I ask. You all have the data that I have this money. Now I'm going to ask you whether I should give this money to Sula or Maria, correct? Now, you vote on it, right? Now, you don't know anything about them, but basically I decide based on the voting, majority voting, I give it to them. Let's say Maria got the voting and I give it to her. Again, please give it back to me, to break. So let's say, now look, distributed data, but I didn't decide. I actually was looking for inputs from you. That's decentralized governance. You have to be very clear. Distributed, decentralized, people confuse it all the time. A lot of times people use this terminology to actually confuse people. In fact, look at this. Brave, I really thought it was a distributed, decentralized platform. And last year, the Brave founder admitted it's semi-centralized. We have a roadmap to slowly become decentralized. Basically, one of the components that they used was Amazon, some web server or something could be. So this was distributed storage, not a decentralized storage. Let's talk about the example. So I think it's clear, right? Distributed data versus distributed. When you talk about distributed, you're talking about data. When you're talking about decentralization, you're talking about the governance, the power. Okay? Now, let's talk about Facebook. Facebook uses actually Amazon web server, and they have multiple locations where they store the data. It's distributed. However, it's centralized governance. They decide what they do with the data. They do censorship. So that's the case here. So you could have systems, architectures that could be anywhere between this to here in blockchain. We will look at that shortly. This is where it gets really confusing in this field. Now, what are the advantages of creating a decentralized architecture? Immutability, meaning you can trust the system, the data is transparent, that's one. If it's, if the governance is decentralized, there's no single authority, so nobody can censor the internet, right? They can't bring it down. Like in some countries, I don't want to say which one because they're recording. I do have friends in those countries. I want to go back. They could actually bring the internet down, right? They can shut down because it's centralized governance. But if it's decentralized internet, nobody can bring it down. Remember, again, decentralized has to be, you understand the difference. It could be two people saying, I'm governing it versus a lot of people governing it. Now, distributed ledger. This is like even Amazon, all the cloud services are distributed because there's no single point of failure, right? They have multiple locations, right? Where they store data. So that's resilient. So it's not unique to this. It's in general, distributed ledger is resilient, right? The last one, if you create an architecture, if you built your DAO and DAOs, everything based on decentralized architecture, there are no intermediaries, supposed to be a free web or low cost. It's red. You'll see why I put it in red. Some cases it's not true. So that's about the evolution of blockchain at a very high level. Now, let's look at the classification. It will help you understand the ecosystem. Then you will see how fragmented the blockchain ecosystem is, why it's so confusing to talk about blockchain. When When you cannot make a general statement about blockchain, you would see that quickly. So now let's talk about start something simple, but where everyone knows how it, coin market cap. How many of you use coin market cap? Okay, at least 40%. So we have consensus. Let's move on. So look at top 10 items on coin market cap. The ones that I have boxed up in gold color, they're all cryptocurrency blockchains. The only purpose is to use it as a ledger to store something of value and transfer, just like Bitcoin did, right? It's Bitcoin and altcoins. And then look at the next slide. So these three items, this is blockchain 1.0 items. These are blockchain 2.0 items, right? Ethereum, EOS, Tron. They're like programmable blockchains. Now move on to the next one. People have used programmable blockchains to create some business models. This is actually a business model, Tether. They issued tokens saying they have money and they issue tokens, right? So that's actually ERC20 token standard. It's a smart contract running on top of Ethereum. And same thing, Binance Coin is an utility token that you could use the exchange using the utility token, right? ERC20. So this is how you classify. Now, it's very high level. Some of you who don't want to know the details, I showed this. But then, do you know what this means, public and permission? So now you may want to know what that is. So I have something, since it's an academic track, I'm going to dive a little deeper into this. So the ledger, remember we talked about everybody has a record of the money that I have? That's a ledger, right? If that ledger, if anybody in the world can see that data, they can also copy that I have this euro and all that. Everybody, right, in the world. That's a public ledger. It's completely transparent, right? That's public. And then let's say only the people in the room can actually see the data, and we don't let anybody else see the data. That's a private ledger, right? That's pretty simple, right? It's private. Now, let's talk about the governance thing. So validators, who decides who's going to get the money? Remember I asked you, like, hey, do I give the money, euro to Sula or give it to Maria, right? So that's like validators, right? You are like deciding, who I give it to, the voting members, right? If the voting member, let's say I said only the people on the first row I take the votes only from the first row, that's a group, closed group, right? But if I say anybody in this room can actually vote on it, that's an open group. It's pretty simple so far. Using these concepts, you can actually understand public, permission, and private. So public chain is actually a combination of public ledger and open group voting. Okay, public ledger, anybody can see, anybody can come and vote on it. Permissioned is, it's a public ledger, anybody can see the data, but only a select people can actually decide the governance, right? The participant in the governance, that's a permission. Private is like, it's a private ledger. It's like private ledger, everybody has a copy, only the first row decides what we do with it. That's a private. So that's pretty much three blockchain categories, and there are examples there. Bitcoin, Ripple, all of this, right? Now, you can go even next level. If blockchains can now start looking at it this way, right? Now this way, if you can program these blockchains, then you can go to the next level. Now, don't worry about these two. They don't exist. We can talk during the coffee break. But this is a private blockchain where you can actually program. That's Hyperledger is an example. Now, one more. If you can actually do tokens and you can do contracts, then all these, you have more boxes. You can see examples, Ethereum, EOS, Cardano. But that's a permission blockchain, EOS and Cardano. Ethereum is a public chain. And this is actually a private chain like R3 Corda. Now, on top of it, you can build dApps and DAO, right? Each one of them. Anyway, it's kind of a little bit detailed, but you may think, why all this craziness? This pretty simple things will help you understand we'll skip this. There are so many consensus algorithms. This simple thing will help you understand the entire blockchain ecosystem. Look at all those boxes there. So that box is actually a cryptocurrency blockchain, that architecture. This box is actually the architecture used in consortium blockchains for financial transactions. This box is the community project, open source, open standard. These are the startups trying to do token stuff on top of public blockchains. These are the guys who are doing consortium blockchains for general purpose thing. That's the blockchain as a service, cloud companies providing services. Here are the logos on the next slide. So this is why blockchain is so confusing, because It's just a collection of different architectures. Any statement you make about one box doesn't apply to the other box, and people fighting about, like, guys here, they say it's all about decentralization. They hate the guys here. They say they're all about, they're trying to centralize blockchain. And the guys here, they say, oh, these guys are useless. The public blockchain is so slow, it consumes so much energy. So people in these different boxes, they keep complaining each other, which is normal. But it cannot be fragmented like this forever. It's not good for the field. You just have to use the right tool for the right problem, right? So this is, I've been looking at this for a year. I actually put together this. This is the second time I'm presenting it, a little more refined. So now we don't have time to go through everything. I do have slides for each one of these, but I don't think we have time. But at least I want to show you something. Let's talk about these two boxes. These two boxes, community projects. These are the guys who really believe in the decentralization, open source, open standard. Of course, on Ethereum, there are projects building identity, voting, registry, and all that. EOS, Voice, they're trying to build a social Facebook on decentralized platform. And there's also Everpedia, right? Have you guys heard of Everpedia? They're trying to do a decentralized Wikipedia. One of the co-founders of Larry Sanger is involved in that. Of course, Tron, this is not a blockchain, but I put it here. They're building a decentralized internet. And the bottom one, they're trying to build decentralized finance. So this is all like decentralized movement, right? That's still trying to build these things. Some of these are very useful for solving social problems. For example, the first one, decentralized identity, is very important for the unbanked, right? Creating identity, and also, people to open a bank account need an identity, right? A lot of people in third world countries, they don't have even identity. They can't open a bank account. Anyways, some of these problems are pretty, social, have a lot of social impact. Now let's talk about dApps. dApps that are built on top of blockchain, programmable blockchains, right? If you look at the top 5 dApps on Ethereum and EOS, you can go to dApp Radar, you can track them, look at the number of users and volume, and look, majority of the dApps are games and gambling, except MakerDAO and Moonlighting, right? MakerDAO is here. So also look at the adoption users, not a whole lot. So of course you have to be realistic. Yes, it's not a mainstream yet, dApps, right? I mean, they're trying, but it's not a mainstream yet. So the next thing, startups. We may have some time. So startups are trying to, what startups need? They need money, right? So they found this way, the blockchain, to raise money, like ICOs, IEOs, STOs, right? So that's kind of what happened. So let's look at quickly. So ICOs, 2017, anyone in any corner of the world can create a website, Whitepaper, put some pretty faces. Some of the websites, they even had like Hollywood star photos on there, claiming to the CTO and things like that, right? I mean, I've seen it. So they raised over $20 billion in this. In fact, as you know, it was pretty easy. Basically, you can take BTC or Ethereum from somebody else, and then you issue a token on blockchain. That's it. You don't need to do anything else. So there was very low barrier to entry, which when there's a very low barrier to entry, everybody will get in, right? So there were a lot of scams, which actually triggered a lot of countries to pay attention to this. You can see some are red, it's illegal, some restricted. So bottom line, the countries wanted to know, who are the issuers? Are they registered? Do they know who are investing? It's bottom line compliance, right? So compliance is basically what you have to do it. So IEOs, basically exchanges now are offering this service where they do the compliance, they issue tokens, and of course they also list the token for exchange. So you have now 3 intermediate services to use blockchain here for this application. Remember, when we started, there was a red thing, it said no intermediaries. Now you can see, at least in this case, you have intermediaries, right? You have a middleman or middlewoman, whatever you want to call it. Now, it gets even worse when you're doing a security token offering, which is what my startup is doing. You need at least 5 different intermediaries to do a security token offering, and each one of them, they're not free, okay? One company told me I have to pay $60,000 when I engage, and then $5,000 per month to use their services, just one box. So it's not free anymore. It's not like, well, at least for this case, right? One segment. I'm talking about one segment. Again, you can't say whole blockchain. I'm talking about the one segment, the token economy. So that's about the startups. Of course, enterprises, we talked about it. Enterprises launched all these consortiums to build blockchains. And those are like blockchains. These are applications like IoT, truck, and all that, right? And one more thing, like companies, big companies, cloud companies, they started using open source like Hyperledger, started building proprietary tools on top of it, put it on cloud, and you pay to use that service. It's like a blockchain on centralized services, cloud services, right? Again, people from the decentralized community, they hate this because it's like, what is this? A decentralized service on a centralized server or something, right? Well, again, the cloud company would claim, oh, we are distributed. No, that's different than decentralized, okay? So that's fine. Now, only last slide. I have one slide on this. So the market is very fragmented. What can bring the people together is actually standards. You can't build an ecosystem without standards. Otherwise, the market will remain the same, okay? So if you look at standards, standards can bring the people, communities together. However, there are many parties working on standards. The developer community is working on token standards, code. Enterprise is working on some architectures like layer by layer, saying this is this layer, that layer. And then, of course, governments are working on standards as well. Here's a summary. International Standards Organization, ISO, IEEE, ITU, they're working on it. Governments, China, US. I think even in INADBA, I hear there's a committee being formed. I'm going to meet with them in Malaga in a couple of weeks. And then enterprises are trying to develop standards for different areas as well. And of course, the developer community, right? So I am involved in at least two of these, IEEE and recently EF, and they launched a mainnet working group. I'm actually a convener. So I'm involved, but still, it's a tough problem to basically make everybody agree to something, but we are trying. So I think Kletos is going to before he shoots me, I'll just stop you. That's my last slide. I think we don't have time for questions, but I'll be out there.
Yeah, so thank you very much for sharing your perspective on the evolution of blockchains. That was very interesting.
I want my euro back, Maria.
Yeah.